They didn't just torch black communities, they drowned them. When people talk about the destruction of black towns in America, most think of fire. They picture Tulsa. They imagine flames devouring homes, white mobs with torches, and a haunting image of smoke rising over a once thriving community. But there's another chapter to this horror story. One so quiet, so methodical, so soaked in governmental progress, that most Americans have never even heard of it. They didn't burn these towns. They flooded them, literally. Across the United States, entire black communities were swallowed by water, vanished beneath lakes and reservoirs in the name of development. This isn't conspiracy. It's documented history. It's a method of erasure, cloaked in the language of modernization. But dig deeper and you'll find patterns. Where black people succeeded independently, owning land, building wealth, creating self-reliant towns, their success was often seen not as a triumph, but a threat. This story was buried under decades of silence and murky waters. And unlike the ashes of Tulsa, these towns can't be visited because they're underwater. And it wasn't just one or two. There are over 100 drowned towns in America, many of them black, many of them thriving, all of them gone. This is no accident. It's part of a larger phenomenon called development-induced displacement, a polite term for when governments forcibly move people to make way for dams, highways, military bases, parks, or, in this case, reservoirs. It affects the poor disproportionately. But when you trace who it happened to most systematically, a disturbing trend reveals itself. In this series, we're diving deep, literally and figuratively, into the black towns lost to water and white supremacy. We begin at one of the deadliest, and some say most haunted, lakes in the United States. Lake Lanier, Georgia, the drowning of Oscarville. If you've ever been to Georgia, chances are you've heard of Lake Lanier. It's a picturesque 38,000-acre man-made lake that draws in over 10 million visitors a year. Families boat there, swim, and picnic by the shoreline. But what if I told you that beneath those calm waters lie the ruins of Black Town, Oscarville, destroyed not just by water, but by white supremacy? Oscarville was a prosperous community in the early 1900s. Located in Forsyth County, it was home to a vibrant black population of farmers, blacksmiths, teachers, and carpenters. These weren't just scattered families. They had built something: schools, churches, businesses, and homes. A full, functioning town. And perhaps more threatening to white power structures, a self-sufficient black economy. But in September 1912, that all changed. That month, 18-year-old May Crow, a white girl, was found assaulted and later died, without any witnesses, and despite a lack of physical evidence. Suspicion immediately fell on the black community. Rob Edwards, a 24-year-old black man, was arrested. But before he could even be tried, a white mob stormed the jail, dragged him out, and lynched him on the courthouse square. They shot him repeatedly, mutilated his body, and then hung it for all to see. Photographs of the lynching were circulated like souvenirs. Additionally, Edwards' wife, Jane Daniel, their neighbor Ed Collins, Jane's cousin Oscar Daniel, and Oscar Daniel's cousin Ernest Knox were arrested. Knox and Oscar Daniel, both teen, were convicted by an all-white jury with lightning speed and hanged publicly before a crowd of 5,000 cheering white spectators. But that still wasn't enough. White mobs, now calling themselves Night Riders, embarked on a campaign of terror. They went door to door, threatening black families, torching their homes and churches. They used dynamite, shotguns, and fire to scare people out. Over 1,100 black residents were forced to flee. And just like that, Forsyth County became an all-white enclave. It remained that way for over 75 years. Even as late as the 1980s, civil rights marches in Forsyth were met with violent resistance from white locals. Oscarville was razed. But that wasn't the end of its story. In the 1950s, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers began work on a massive project, the Buford Dam, to create Lake Lanier. The stated goal was to supply water and hydroelectric power to the growing Atlanta metro area. But the land they chose to flood included the remains of Oscarville. The government purchased the land, often under market value or with coercion, and then flooded it. So what's under Lake Lanier today? Churches, homes, farmlands, graves. Entire roads remain under the water, eerily preserved. Divers have reported sightings of intact structures. Cemeteries were supposed to be relocated, but many believe that dozens, perhaps hundreds, of black graves were left behind. Locals say Lake Lanier is cursed, and perhaps it is. Since its creation, over 700 people have died there. Boats malfunction, swimmers vanish. Even seasoned divers report eerie encounters beneath the surface. Legends of hauntings abound. Some say they've seen figures walking on the water, or felt hands dragging them down. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the history is chilling enough. This isn't just a story of a town lost to time. It's a story of deliberate erasure. And it doesn't stop here. In Tallapoosa County, Alabama, there's a lake called Lake Martin. It's stunning, serene, and looks like the perfect escape from the chaos of the world. But beneath its beauty lies the sunken town of Kowaliga, and the incredible story of a man who defied the odds. John Jackson Benson was born enslaved. After emancipation, he didn't just walk free, he fought to get his family back. He found his sister, brought her home, and then did something even more extraordinary. He bought the plantation where he was once enslaved. Bit by bit, with money he made working in coal mines, Benson bought the land from his former enslaver. Then he bought more, eventually owning 3,000 acres of Alabama land. There, he built Kowaliga, a black community with schools, a church, a sawmill, cotton gin, and even the first black-owned railroad in Alabama. His son, William E. Benson, took it further, establishing the Dixie Industrial Company and a school that became known across the South. Kowaliga wasn't just a town. It was a vision of what black prosperity could be. But the world did not see it. The town boasted homes, schools, churches, and businesses, all owned and operated by African Americans. The residents cultivated the land, produced goods, and engaged in commerce, creating a self-sustaining economy that defied the prevailing narratives of black dependency. Kowaliga's success was not merely economic. It was symbolic. In an era marked by Jim Crow laws and rampant racial discrimination, the town stood as a testament to what black Americans could achieve when given the opportunity. It challenged the status quo, demonstrating that African Americans could build prosperous communities without white oversight or intervention. However, Kowaliga's very success made a target. In the 1920s, the Alabama Power Company embarked on a project to construct Martin Dam on the Tallapoosa River. The dam's purpose was to generate hydroelectric power for the region, a symbol of modernization and progress. But this progress came at a cost. The creation of Lake Martin, the reservoir formed by the dam, required the flooding of vast tracts of land, including the area occupied by Kowaliga. Despite protests and appeals, the residents were forced to sell their land, often at prices far below market value. By 1926, the waters had risen, submerging the town and erasing it from a map. Another thriving black community, gone. Another page of history, drowned, but not forgotten. Even today, locals tell stories of seeing buildings and tree trunks rise from the waters when the lake levels drop. The ghosts of Kowaliga haven't left. They're waiting. And Kowaliga wasn't alone. The story of Kowaliga is not unique. Across the United States, numerous black communities were displaced or destroyed under the guise of progress. Whether through construction of dams, highways, or urban renewal projects, these acts of erasure have left indelible scars on the collective memory of African Americans. Yet, the legacy of Kowaliga endures. It serves as a reminder of the resilience and ingenuity of black communities in the face of systemic oppression. And it challenges us to confront the uncomfortable truths of our history, ensuring that the stories of towns like Kowaliga are not lost to the depths of time. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you support our mission to uncover and share the hidden histories that have shaped our world. We also invite you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you heard of Kowaliga before? What are your reflections on the stories of communities like it? Your engagement helps keep these important narratives alive. In the next chapter, we visit the most unexpected place, a black town in the heart of New York City.
There are over 100 drowned American towns, and many were destroyed in the name of something called development-induced displacement. That's when people have to leave their homes so the government can develop things like dams
New York
or
prides
parks.
itself on progress. But beneath the leafy walkways and playgrounds of Central Park lies a different story, a forgotten black community. Before Central Park existed, a black settlement called Seneca Village stood in its place. Founded in 1825, it was a haven for free black families in a city that barely tolerated them. Seneca Village began in 1825, when landowners in the area, John and Elizabeth Whitehead, subdivided their land and sold it as 200 lots. Andrew Williams, a 25-year-old African-American shoe shiner, bought the first 3 lots for $125. Epiphany Davis, a store clerk, bought 12 lots for $578, and the AME Zion Church purchased another 6 lots. From there, a community was born. From 1825 to 1832, the Whiteheads sold about half of their land parcels to other African Americans. By the early 1830s, there were approximately 10 homes in the village. Seneca Village wasn't a slum. It was a thriving town. Over 250 residents, most of them black, owned homes, had gardens, schools, and 3 churches. In a city where most black residents lived in rented tenements, Seneca Village offered land, dignity, and stability, but white elites wanted a park. And in 1857, using the power of eminent domain, the city forcibly evicted the residents, tore down their homes, and erased their community from history. They didn't need water to erase this town, just the will to pretend it never existed. The same playbook of removal rewritten. Today, most visitors to Central Park have no idea that beneath their feet lies a once thriving black town. No statues, no monuments, just silence. But imagine the outrage if a white neighborhood were bulldozed for a park, without compensation, recognition, or memory. That's what happened here, in the so-called progressive North. And if that shocks you, just wait until you hear what happened in Texas. Next stop, Lake Travis, Texas. Like many lakes in the U.S., it's artificial, built in the 1940s by flooding large swaths of land to create reservoirs and hydroelectric power. But one of the casualties of that progress was a vibrant black settlement in Marshall Ford, a working-class enclave that had been growing for generations. Residents were promised compensation. Most didn't get it. Homes were flattened, churches destroyed. Caskets from graves floated up as water levels rose. Some families still visit the lake and tell their children, "Our people are down there." The pattern is undeniable. Oscarville, Kowaliga, Seneca Village, Marshall Ford. Each town had thriving black residents, land ownership, institutions built from scratch, and a future worth protecting. Until white power structures said no, progress meant their displacement. And the lakes we now celebrate as recreation zones are soaked in black history. But this story doesn't end in the past. Because even today, some of these same towns are being rediscovered through sonar, dives, and accidental finds. And what they reveal could rewrite everything. For decades, they lay in silence, buried beneath the murky waters of man-made lakes. Towns built with sweat, dreams, and defiance now reduced to whispers and fragments. But time, like truth, has a way of resurfacing. And in recent years, something unexpected has begun to happen. The water is receding. Whether by climate change, intense droughts, or shifting weather patterns, levels in several major reservoirs across the United States have dropped. And with it, the ghosts of drowned black towns are returning to the surface. In Georgia, fishermen and weekend boaters at Lake Lanier have reported their boats scraping against something solid. Stone walls, roof lines, remnants of once thriving communities like Oscarville. When the water dips low enough, foundations appear like skeletal remains. Roads reemerge. Sometimes, so do graves. In 2022, divers exploring the area uncovered the remains of wooden coffins buried beneath the lake. Encased in mud but eerily well-preserved, they serve as both a chilling relic and a haunting reminder. This wasn't just a lake. It was a cemetery, a neighborhood, a home in Texas. During an extreme drought in 2011, Lake Buchanan receded enough to reveal the lost town of Bluffton, once a thriving agricultural community. Parts of its church foundations, fences, and homesteads were visible to the naked eye. People walked the streets again, this time in disbelief. In Alabama, near Lake Martin, Older residents recall tales of Kowaliga's bell tower. They say that when the lake is still and the world is quiet, you can still hear its bell toll from beneath the water. Of course, it could be folklore, or it could be memory refusing to die. These events aren't just eerie. They're consequential. Because every time a piece of these towns breaks the surface, the lies we've been told about American history begin to erode. Historians, archaeologists, and divers have started a new kind of mapping, not just with charts and sonar, but with memory, with oral histories, with the dusty corners of archives where truth has been hidden. They're finding entire city grids preserved under lakes, wooden floorboards and door frames still standing, churches and schoolhouses, now eerie sanctuaries for fish and silence. They're finding evidence of town planning, of neighborhoods with purpose. These were not scattered huts or backwoods cabins. These were structured, organized communities. They were thriving. And perhaps most chilling of all, they're finding graves, rows of them, marked and unmarked, some undisturbed, others shifted or desecrated by decades of water movement. Why were these towns never exhumed properly? Why weren't residents allowed to relocate their dead with dignity before their homes were flooded? Why, even now, is there no memorial at Lake Lanier for Oscarville? Why is there no national registry honoring these communities? The answer, of course, lies in the intersection of power, race, and silence. Many of these lakes were created by the federal government through projects led by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Under the guise of progress, electricity, irrigation, recreation, entire communities were displaced. In theory, they were paid. In reality, most black landowners received pennies on the dollar or were forced out under eminent domain laws. And so, generation after generation grew up swimming, boating, and picnicking over history they never knew existed. But the truth is surfacing. And with every storm, every drought, every lowering shoreline, the question grows louder. What do we do now?
These drowned towns are part of the Black American history they don't want to teach you. It's ugly and it's gross and we don't even know all of it. And the more we find out, the harder it is to love this place that would do those things to so many people.
If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel. By supporting our work, you ensure that these hidden histories continue to be told. We also want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Should these towns be honored with memorials? What does justice look like for communities that were drowned? Don't let these ghosts be forgotten. Hit that bell and stay with us.